My name is Kyle. My ex-wife is Jessica. We were together for 10 years, married for 7. I know it sounds cliché. Met in college. I was studying engineering, she was studying marketing. Jessica is a beautiful blonde with blue eyes who could charm anyone. Her father, Richard, owned a small chain of car dealerships. Her mother, Susan, was a housewife. My dad is a mechanic, my mom is a nurse. There was an income difference, but I never felt insecure about it because by the time I graduated college I already had 2 job offers. The first red flag came about 2 years before the divorce. Jessica started staying late at work. She was the marketing director at a regional office of a large pharmaceutical company. Great salary. My salary as a project engineer was a bit less, but together we lived very comfortably. House, 2 cars, vacations. I began to notice changes in her behavior. She became more aggressively protective of her phone. She used to leave it on the table and go take a shower. In the last 6 months, she took it with her even to the bathroom. When I jokingly asked, "Oh, what's so secret?" she'd explode. "You don't trust me? Is this your insecurity? Maybe you need a therapist?" Top-tier gaslighting. There were other small things. She bought new lingerie, completely not her style. When I complimented her and tried to hug her, she pulled away and said she was tired. Sex first became rare, then almost disappeared. If it happened once a month, it felt like she was doing a boring chore. "Let's get this over with, I want to sleep." Like an idiot, I made excuses for her. Told myself, work is intense, there's a renegotiation of supplier contracts. I even bought her a spa gift certificate for the weekend, hoping it would reduce her stress. She went with a friend, or so I thought, and came back glowing. Too glowing. Here's where the real story begins. One evening I was working on drawings in the kitchen. Around 11 p.m., Jessica took a shower and went to the bedroom, leaving her phone on the kitchen table. I wasn't planning to snoop, honestly, but the phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. A message came from a contact saved as, Melissa R., work. "That was incredible tonight, baby. Love hearing you moan. Sweet dreams." I froze. My hands went cold. I read it again. Then I unlocked the phone. I knew the code, we'd shared it for years, her birthday. Apparently she just hadn't gotten around to changing it. I opened the chat with, Melissa. It wasn't a she. It was a he. A man named Brad. I scrolled back several weeks. I couldn't believe my eyes. They were texting as if they'd been lovers for at least 8 months. Here's a summary. Brad complimented her new lingerie, the same one I noticed. They discussed how she would go to his town for a conference next Friday. There were pictures of food they ate together at restaurants I'd invited her to, but she refused because she was busy. And the most disgusting part, she sent my address to Brad on WhatsApp. "Come by tomorrow afternoon, I'll tell Kyle I'm going shopping." So they were screwing in my bed while I was at work. I felt physical nausea. Went to the sink, drank a glass of water. I wanted to grab a frying pan and go into the bedroom. But I turned off the phone, put it back. I decided to play smart. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay next to her and thought. She turned over sometimes and smiled in her sleep. Smiling at Brad, probably. The next day I pretended nothing happened. Kissed her on the cheek, said, "Have a good day," and went to work. But I didn't work. I went into a conference room and started systematically gathering information. I knew I needed 3 things. Evidence, a lawyer, and a plan. First thing, I bought a small voice recorder. From a hardware store, in cash. I also set up a keylogger on the home computer. Yes, I'm a tech guy, not a problem. I knew that secretly obtained evidence might not hold up in court in some states, but I needed it for myself and for mediation. 3 days later they met again. I knew because I was tracking her location through the old iPad she forgot to remove from Find My Friends. She went to a business hotel on the other side of town. I took time off work, took my car, and parked a block away. I sat and waited for 3 hours. At one point I almost went inside. But I talked myself out of doing anything stupid. I took a few photos of her entering the hotel with a man, tall, athletic build, expensive watch, leather jacket. That was Brad. The next day I found him on social media. Brad Harrison, 35. He turned out to be our neighbor. Well, not exactly neighbor. He lived in an upscale residential complex about 2 miles from us. His profile said he was an independent financial consultant and partner at Harris & Tate investment firm. It all looked very wealthy. I dug deeper, checked his firm through public company databases. Turns out it was a small, very shady office that mostly sold dubious insurance policies to retirees. But on the surface, gloss and shine. I met with a divorce lawyer. His name was Mr. Garcia. Old, bald, with deep wrinkles and a piercing gaze. He specialized in cases where one spouse tries to hide assets. After my story, he whistled. "What do you want, Kyle?" he asked. "Divorce. And for her not to get a cent more than she's legally entitled to. And also," I hesitated, "I want him to pay. But legally, what did you catch them on?" I told him about the message, the hotel. He shook his head. "The judge might dismiss that as emotion. We need something more substantial. Or wait for her to make a mistake." And then came an unexpected twist. About 2 weeks after I discovered the affair, Jessica became suspiciously sweet. She made my favorite lasagna, first time in 6 months. Said she loved me and wanted to talk about our future. I tensed up. Usually a honeymoon phase like that comes a few days before the knife in the back. That evening she started talking about finances. About how her father was having business problems and needed a loan. Then, that we were investing too little. She suggested transferring all our savings, about $180,000, into an investment fund of a guy she knew. The guy's name was Brad Harrison. "He's a genius, Kyle," she said. "He promises a 15% annual return. Our money will work for us." I asked casually, "How do you know him?" "Through work," she answered too quickly. "He consulted our company on retirement plans." A lie. Pure and simple. I said I'd think about it. She insisted. "There's little time, the offer is limited." This was the classic divorce scenario. Move joint assets to the lover's accounts, then file for divorce, leaving me with nothing. Or make the money disappear in bad investments and split the losses, while the money is actually in Brad's pocket. I said no, calmly. "No, thanks, I'm not ready to risk our joint savings." Jessica went ballistic. A fight started. She yelled that I don't understand finance, that I was always worthless because I grew up in my mechanic father's garage. Classic. I kept quiet, but inside I was boiling. That night I turned on the recorder in the bedroom, left it under my pillow. I knew she might call Brad after I fell asleep. And guess what happened? Around 1 a.m. she quietly went into the bathroom. I crept to the door and heard this. The recording was later transcribed. "Jessica. He didn't bite. That dumb mechanic won't give up the money. But I have a plan B. We file for divorce first. I'll claim he abused me. And that he spent the family budget on drugs. Who will believe him? I'm from a good family, he's the son of a mechanic. Brad. Baby, do it carefully. Hire a lawyer who likes dirty tactics. And when you get the money, we'll go to the Bahamas. Your share is 300 plus if we sell the house quickly. Her. I'll transfer the house to my father as a fake debt so Kyle can't claim it. I've already prepared the documents, just need to forge his signature. He's too trusting, he won't even notice." I stepped away from the door. My hands were shaking. She wasn't just planning a divorce, she was planning a crime. Forgery, false accusations of violence and drug use. I could have gone to prison. I couldn't sleep. At 4 a.m. I quietly dressed and drove to my best friend Marcus's place. Marcus listened, gave me whiskey, and said, "Kyle, you can destroy them. But you have to stay cold-blooded. You're an engineer, design their collapse." The next day I hired a private investigator, a former cop recommended by Marcus. It was expensive, $5,000 for 2 weeks of work, but worth it. The Mike, started surveillance on Brad. Very quickly, interesting things came out. First, Brad was married. His wife, Lauren, was a stay-at-home mom, and they had 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. She had no idea about the affairs, but according to neighbors, their marriage was already cracking due to finances. Brad wasn't earning what he pretended. His firm was on the verge of bankruptcy. He was taking out loans to maintain the image of a successful investor. Second, the investment firm was a pyramid scheme. They took money from trusting clients, paid early investors with new deposits. A classic Ponzi scheme, but on paper it looked nice. Downtown office, receptionist, espresso machine. Third, Jessica had already transferred 40 grand of her own money, apparently a work bonus, to Brad's accounts without my knowledge. That was her personal money, but still, she had invested with a con man. Week 3 of my investigation was decisive. One evening Jessica was working late, and I went to my lawyer's office with a folder of documents. Mr. Garcia reviewed everything: the recordings, the transfers, the PI's reports, the bathroom audio, which, under our state laws, couldn't be used in court but could be given to prosecutors as evidence of a planned crime. "Kyle," Garcia said, "you have two paths. First, just file for divorce with a 50-50 asset split and present evidence of infidelity as cause. Second, strike first, turn everything over to the DA for fraud and false accusation. But that will burn all bridges. She could go to prison." "She wanted me to go to prison for abuse that never happened," I said. "Let her burn." Garcia nodded. He prepared a divorce filing citing infidelity and a motion to freeze all joint accounts. He also sent an anonymous tip to the SEC and the Financial Crimes Unit regarding Harris and Tate's activities, anonymous, from a former client harmed by the scheme. But the most interesting thing happened when I met Lauren, Brad's wife. It happened by accident. I was waiting for my car in a mall parking lot, coffee in hand, and I saw her. Lauren was taking the kids to a cafe. She had been crying. I recognized her from the PI's photos. My heart skipped. I could have just walked by. But I remembered how I felt when I saw that message. She deserved to know the truth. I walked over and introduced myself. "Hi, are you Lauren? Sorry to bother you, but this is important. Your husband Brad is having an affair with my wife, Jessica." She looked at me like I'd electrocuted her. Then she covered her face and cried. The kids stared at their mom. She took them to the play area and gestured for me to sit down. "I suspected," she whispered. "He comes home late, says he has meetings. We have debt, he asked me to sign papers for the house." I feel like an idiot. I told her everything. About the Ponzi scheme, the attempt to steal my savings, the false accusations. I showed her the hotel photos. Lauren looked at them, and her eyes turned cold. "He's ruined us," she said. "I knew it. That house we live in, it's mortgaged. I thought we were buying it, but he took out a predatory loan." We talked for an hour. Lauren turned out to be smart and strong. She said she had access to Brad's home computer and his old phone he kept in the garage. She promised to copy everything she found and send it to me. And she did. 2 days later I had a bunch of files in my email. Brad's emails to clients promising guaranteed returns, fake investment certificates, and most importantly, his chat with Jessica where they discussed transferring my house to her father Richard's name. Jessica wrote, "He's an idiot, he never checks documents. I'll forge his signature on the transfer, and my father will record a fake debt. The court will never figure it out." Oh, one more thing. Jessica's father, Richard, I'd always liked him. He often complained his business was doing badly. Turns out he introduced Jessica to Brad at some business conference. Richard himself owed Brad a large sum and tried to pay by setting up his daughter. Lovely family business. I put everything in one folder. D-Day was set for Friday the 13th. I chose that date on purpose so she'd remember. Thursday night Jessica was calm. She drank wine and talked about how nice it would be to go to Europe next summer. I nodded. Inside, I was shaking. Friday morning I got up before her, put on my best suit. She was surprised. "Where are you going?" I said, "An important meeting." That was true. I first went to my lawyer. We filed all the documents in court at 9 a.m. At 9:30, a judge issued a temporary order freezing all accounts. At 10 o'clock, a process server went to Jessica's work and handed her the divorce papers and asset freeze. It was harsh, serving her at work, but Garcia insisted. Less chance she'll destroy evidence. Then the chain reaction. At 11 o'clock, the SEC and local financial investigators raided Harris and Tate's office. Brad was led out in handcuffs. His partner was also charged. Someone had apparently leaked 1 million documents. At 12 o'clock, Lauren filed for divorce and requested temporary custody due to her husband's financial incompetence. My phone started blowing up. First texts from Jessica. "What's happening? Why are the accounts frozen? Kyle, answer me." Then calls from her mother, Susan. "How could you do this to my girl? You monster." Then from her father, Richard. "Son, let's talk man to man. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding." I blocked them all. The lawyers would handle communication now. That evening I went back to our house. Jessica was sitting in the kitchen, swollen from crying. 2 suitcases stood next to her. She wasn't yelling. She looked at me with hatred. "Did you enjoy that?" she asked quietly. Destroying someone's life? You planned to frame me, I said. Forge my signature, accuse me of battery. You wanted to take everything from me and put me in prison. Nothing would have stopped you. So don't give me this ruined life crap. She stood up. On the table was a printout of her chat with Brad. I'd left it on purpose. Jessica picked up the pages, looked at them, tore them up. You have no idea what you're losing, she said. Brad wasn't just a lover. He was a chance at a real life. Without your boring engineering, without your dull drawings, do you think I wanted to grow old with you? I laughed. Your real life is in a holding cell right now. And yes, your father is also on the witness list for the fraud case. He knew about the scheme and recommended you to Brad. She went pale. I thought she'd hit me. But she just grabbed her suitcases and walked out. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. Done. But as you can guess, that wasn't the end. 2 months later, the court date. The divorce. Because I provided undeniable evidence of infidelity and attempted asset concealment. The judge awarded me 70% of the marital assets and the house outright. It was bought with my premarital funds, proven easily. Jessica got her 30%, but almost all of it went to lawyers and debts she'd racked up. She was also ordered to pay me $15,000 in emotional damages. She didn't pay, so I filed for wage garnishment. Jessica's career collapsed. Her company found out about the court scandal. A coworker found the public case file online because it involved financial fraud. She was fired for loss of trust. Now she works at some small agency making $45,000 a year, when at her peak she made $120,000 plus bonuses. Brad got 7 years suspended with 3 years actual time for financial fraud. He's served a year and a half so far. His wife Lauren divorced him, kept the house, which the bank is now threatening to take, but that's not my problem. We text sometimes. She moved to her parents with the kids and works remotely. And the strangest thing happened 8 months after the divorce. I started getting my life in order, renovating the house, sold 1 car. I lived alone, didn't date. Then one evening the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there stood Jessica. Barely any makeup, wearing a cheap coat over an old sweater I'd given her 5 years ago. Can I come in? She asked. I hesitated a minute but let her in. Let her see what she lost. The house was clean, smelled of new wallpaper, a new projector in the living room. She sat on the couch, hands in her lap. Kyle, I need to tell you something. I want to come back. I didn't answer. She continued. Brad turned out to be a nobody. He didn't even call me after his arrest. And you were a good husband. I was blind. I'm willing to go to therapy, work on the relationship. Please. I'd waited for this moment for months. In my fantasies I imagined looking at her with icy calm and then kicking her out. But I only felt tired. Jessica, I said, sitting across from her. You forged my signature. You told the court I hid you and used drugs. If the judge had believed you, I'd have a criminal record. I wouldn't be able to work in my profession. Do you realize that? I was desperate, she sniffled. Brad manipulated me. You're an adult, I said. A marketing director. You're not a victim. You were a participant. There's a difference. You're upset now because you lost status. Money. A house. Not me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. A loving person might cheat. That's painful but understandable. But you would have destroyed me completely. You planned to send me into poverty and prison. You don't deserve a second chance. She was quiet. Then she said softly, You're right. Probably. But I still love you. Something inside me wavered. Damn it, 10 years is no joke. I felt habit, attachment. But I forced myself to remember those recordings, those messages, that cold glint in her eyes when she rehearsed how she'd tell the judge I abused her. I stood up. You need to go. I wish you well. Truly. But not together. She left. I locked the door and sat on the floor. Then the doorbell rang again. I thought she forgot something. I opened it. It was her mother, Susan, with a bottle of cheap cognac and a red, flustered face. Kyle, I didn't come to fight. I came to apologize. For her. And for myself. I know about Richard, about his debts. I know he set up our daughter. I'm begging you, take her back. I said, Are you serious? Take her back like a toy? Do I look like someone who would live with a woman who wanted to destroy me? Susan cried. Then she said, If you don't take her back, she'll drink herself to death. She's already having problems. I'm begging you as a mother. I said, Susan, you don't need me. You need a drug counselor or a therapist. I'm an ex-son-in-law. Not responsible for saving your daughter from the consequences of her own actions. And if you keep pushing, I'll get a restraining order." She left. Now, it's been about a year since that day. I'm dating a girl named Tara. She's a vet. We met when I brought in a stray kitten I found. Tara is kind, calm, makes good money, and most importantly, she doesn't have that crazy glint in her eyes that Jessica had when she wanted money and status. Sometimes I see Jessica's social media posts through friends of friends. She writes things like, "We should forgive the mistakes of youth," and "True love comes back." I realize she still doesn't understand what she did. Or she understands, but the remorse is fake. Brad will be released in a year and a half. His firm is bankrupt. Clients have sued him, some have already won. There's nothing to pay with. His business partner killed himself, hung himself in his garage, when he learned his family lost everything. That was a heavy moment for me. I felt guilty, even though I wasn't to blame. I didn't order the suicide. But my actions started an avalanche. My therapist said, "You aren't responsible for his mental state. He chose to defraud people." So that's my story. I got revenge, in the sense that justice was served. I didn't get my hands dirty, I just gave the system information. But there's a scar inside. I can't fully trust a partner anymore. I wake up at night and check Tara's phone. Nothing so far. I'm working on it. Advice for anyone reading. If you notice odd behavior, gather evidence calmly and methodically. Don't let emotions take over. Hire a good lawyer and separate your assets as quickly as possible. Don't hope your partner will come to their senses. If they're at the point of planning forgery, they won't.